I don't want to sit down and analyze spreadsheets. I don't want to sit there and create spreadsheets. I don't want to sit there and do, certain financial things that, involve me making adjustments and budgeting and this. So I was like, okay, who can I bring into my business that I could show them this vision and that they would be bought into the vision? And then they could do, these are the tasks that I don't like to do. These are the tasks that I love to do. And how can we make this work?
You're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Smart people would know how to use all these different tools. They
start with something small.
You'll never get your entire organization if you don't pull off operations. Don't give up.
It can be as small as that.
I think you guys are going to have our last today.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Delegate That podcast, where we discuss the art and science of delegation, business, and leadership. Today, I am stoked to chat with a very good friend of mine, Adrian Accay. Please, good sir, introduce yourself. Tell us about what you've got going on. Really looking forward to digging into to everything you've got your hands in.
I appreciate the intro, Adam. I'm so happy to be here. Honestly, connecting with you. And I love what you're doing with this podcast. In terms of delegation, obviously, it's the key to my life in everything I do. So what I'm doing now currently is I am working on building a functional medicine practice, so called 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁𝘀 Functional Health. You guys can check us out. It's really geared towards helping people live the healthiest life they could live possibly. And honestly, it wouldn't do it without the power of delegation, because it's such an involved business. But it's there. It serves the purpose of my passion to be able to help people live the best life that they could potentially live, so that they could be there for their family, be there for their spouses, be there for their friends, and be there for themselves.
Do you feel overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time? It's time to reclaim your schedule and focus on what truly matters. Get your time back with elite remote talent without the time zone hassle. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus on your $1,000 an hour tasks. Schedule your free strategy call at 𝗺𝗷𝘀𝘀𝘁𝗀.io.
I love it. Yeah, it's I think that the health side of obviously you've been in the health world for a long time. You're a pharmacist by training, and you've done that for a long time. So health is obviously super important to you. But when people sit there and think to themselves, delegation, health, delegation, like how can I delegate my health to somebody? How does this, I would love to be able to hire a cook that's in my house all the time and all these things. But how do you kind of apply? Obviously there's a difference between how you delegate inside of your business, in creating that business, and then how you would view delegation for an individual person's health and how that kind of looks. So can you kind of walk me down what that looks like to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So just to take a step back, right? So people, you mentioned pharmacy background. So being in conventional medicine for 20 years plus, I understood the value of conventional medicine, right? People need healthcare. But where the disconnect happens is where it becomes the only option. And there's so much that happens before you get to conventional medicine. And so this is why functional medicine is extremely important, because we can help you before you get to the point where you need medication or you need to see a doctor, to keep yourself as healthy as possible so that we don't need to go there. So kind of tackling both sides of things, right? Because once you're at a certain point, yes, traditional medicine is extremely important. And in terms of delegation, to go back to your question, which is really important. So delegation in your business, there's no way that you can run something all by yourself if you want to scale it and really help as many people as possible, whether it's in pharmacy or in functional medicine. And then how does delegation happen in terms of health? Well, health is a very big word, right? So when we talk about health, which part are we talking about? Are we talking about sleep? Are we talking about exercise? Are we talking about nutrition? Are we talking about stress? Are we talking about toxin removals? So the key there is you can't really delegate the things that you should be doing, but you could always delegate the things that you shouldn't be doing. And the question becomes what are the things that you shouldn't be doing in life, right? And so what ends up happening with most people, and this goes right back into health, is they take on way too much. And then what ends up happening is they cause stress, extreme amount of stress on their bodies and in their lives, because they don't understand the power of delegation. And when you're able to delegate and remove those stresses that can cause the other issues in your life, you can actually live a much healthier life than if you were to take all of that on.
So I know in my personal life, there's a ton of stuff, right, that I could, because health comes a lot in what food we're putting in our mouth, what things we're watching, what's, the activities that we're doing, the air that we're breathing, the bed that we're sleeping on, all that stuff. And when it comes to the business side of the house, all of that, if I'm the CEO, if I'm the entrepreneur, if I'm the business owner, all of that belongs to me. So how do I know what I should and shouldn't be touching inside of my business? How do I know what to delegate and what not to delegate? Because sometimes, if we're too involved, like we feel like we should be involved in everything, have our fingers involved in everything. So as you were building this out in business, how do you kind of make sure that you're delegating the right things out that are the things that you shouldn't be doing, like you talked about?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a loaded question, right?
Because, very much so. You're welcome.
Yeah, because I'm like, all right, wait, this is like 3 questions in one. All right, so let's talk about BizDad a little bit, right? So you have a BizDad podcast. BizDad is incredible. It's talking about how you as a father and how you run a business and how you run your house, right? And it's this combined. So when you're running a household, it's the same thing as running a company. You're raising your children so that they can become self-sufficient, right? So what does that look like? So my kids have chores. They have to get things done. Now, I could, yes, do all of these chores for them, or I could spend time teaching them the system and process of every single thing that needs to be done in the house or in their life, and they can carry that forward, and now they can add value in the home. And it's not just me or mom doing it, right? It's all of us collectively. So a perfect example, yesterday we had to power wash the patio in our home. And I've been putting it off because I wanted to teach my kids how to do it. I didn't want to just do it because then I have to do it again next time and again the following time. So what I did was I sat down and I said, okay, what are the points? So how we turn on the power wash? What are the dangers of the power wash? How do we actually power wash? Is there a sequence to power washing? And how does this whole process look? So I broke this whole thing down and I sat down with my son for about 15 minutes. I said, hey, Bob, this is a power wash. We have to put gas. This is how it works. A, B, C. This is how you turn it on. You choke it, then you run it. And then you have to be careful because if it hits your foot, it could potentially break the skin. I was like, and this is the system that we're going to do. And this is what we're looking for in the end. And I sat there and I had him do it. And then I grabbed his hand and we walked back and forth and we did a small area together. And I said, now I'm going to allow you to do it. And he was like, this is so satisfying, Dad. It's so much fun because you get to see the area get cleaned, right? And so I watched him for a few minutes and then I said, okay, great. Let's make some adjustments. And I was like, what did you learn here? And he told me. And I said, okay, let's do the next patch. And then I walked away from it. And now I stood there until he finished the whole process. And then I said, okay, beautiful. What are some things that came up during the process? He was like, well, the walls got dirty. I'm like, beautiful. I was like, so what should we do here? And he's like, okay, we're going to have to spray the walls. I said, great. So we're going to need a broom as well next, right? To sweep away this stuff. And what I did there is I taught him a process. And now I don't need to do it anymore. I delegated it out. And I said, okay, every quarter we're going to have to do it, or twice a year we're going to have to do this process. And next time I'll go in and I'll check it to make sure, and it goes onto an audit list. So now if we pivot the same idea to business, I look at everything that needs to be done in the business and I write it all out from A to Z. And it's going to take some time because each process has micro processes to it. And then what I say, what are the things I love to do? And I love connecting with people like you, Adam. I love speaking. I love making connections and relationships. I love thinking about how I can scale certain things. And I love helping people when it comes to health and getting people to live the best life ever, right? And so I sat there and I was like, okay, what are the things I was like, how does that work into my business? And then I said, okay, what are the things I don't like to do? Well, I don't want to sit down and analyze spreadsheets. I don't want to sit there and create spreadsheets. I don't want to sit there and do, certain financial things that, involve me making adjustments and budgeting and this. So I was like, okay, who can I bring into my business that I could show them this vision and that they would be bought into the vision? And then they could do, these are the tasks that I don't like to do. These are the tasks that I love to do. And how can we make this work? And then I would sit there and be like, okay, here's my vision for, let's say, for instance, spreadsheets. Hey, I'm not a spreadsheet person. I bring someone in and I'm like, all right, this person's excellent at creating spreadsheets. Beautiful. Here's my vision for, I want to be able to track every single thing that's done in the business from A to Z. These are all the things. And I want to be able to have a checklist for everything. And then something that I can go into monthly and check to see if it was done. And they're like, oh, this is easy. They're like, I can go in and do this, this, this. Beautiful. Can you show me how? So they do it. I'm like, all right, nice. So then what I just did is I delegated it out. And I said, hey, these are the other issues I need in the business, and then so on. And so we start working on those processes. And as you know, in every business, we have problems. So every problem needs a solution. Every solution needs a system. Every system needs to be tested. And every tested system needs to see what other problems could be potentially created from that solution. And so what I do is I go through that process, and I have people who can sit there and create those solutions that I've come up with. And sometimes we'll brainstorm together. And it's the same thing at home. I do it with my kids. And so the delegation process, you don't just tell and go. You tell, you check, you verify, you try it, and then you release. And then you have to keep verifying it every month.
You kind of answer what my next question was going to be as you were talking about that, right? So like your pressure washing scenario was something you already knew how to do, right? Like you know how to pressure wash. You're teaching somebody how to pressure wash. Those are, unless it's something you love to do, some of the easier things to delegate. Hey, this is how we do it. This is already the process. Here, learn this process. Okay, I'll check on you later. And then you talked about like the spreadsheet side of the house. Okay, show me how to do that. So when you're sitting down with somebody and you're creating a business, you already, you probably have an example of something that as you were creating 𝗍𝗫𝘀, I don't really know how to do this portion of it. I don't really know what this is, but I know I need to hire somebody to do that because I don't know how to do it. And I know I need them to be able to champion that thing. So how is it that you kind of bring somebody in and know that they're the right person to champion that thing? And then also, learn the process enough to know when they're doing what they're supposed to versus slacking off somewhere, right? Because you still have to have the oversight. So how do you kind of make sure that you're understanding what they're doing to the point where you can know that they're delegating, that you've delegated it well?
Yeah, so it's a fabulous question, right? Because that is one of the biggest challenges in business, is not knowing what you don't know. So one thing that my dad, and I give him a lot of credit for this, and I used to fight him on it all the time, is he would tell me that when people are over your house fixing stuff, stand over them and learn what they're doing, right? And I'm like, I don't want to do it. And he was like, nobody's telling you to do it, but learn how to do it. Learn what it's supposed to look like. And I said, okay. So he would make me, like if somebody came in, like my dad's an electrical engineer, so he would have me watch him work on electric. And I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this, right? But what I didn't realize until I got older was, if I were ever to bring in an electrician and they start doing something, electricity, if you do it wrong, you could burn your house down. And so me knowing, I'm like, hold on a second, that's a 20 or 30 amp, but you're using, on a 20 amp, you're using like a 14 gauge or a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge. Like, which one are you using? I know. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. Like I know what he's supposed to be doing. Now let's talk about the part where you don't know. This is the power of AI. I will often go into AI and say, hey, I want to build out this system or this process or this part of the business. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I was like, I don't even know where to start. So it will start giving you ideas, like potentially, hey, watch this podcast or watch this, like this podcast, right? Or watch this YouTube video or read this book. And so now what ends up happening is I have this collective set of knowledge, not crazy amount to do it, but enough to understand that if I wanted to delegate it out, what I'm looking for. So now when I bring this person in, I go into chat. I said, okay, great. I watched this video. I read this book, and I watched this podcast. Can you give me a job description that combines everything I'm looking for? And it will give you a job description. I'll read through it to see if it's everything I'm looking for. Then when I post it, I'll say, hey, I'll ask chat, give me a test to see that when I hire this person, or if I'm going to hire them, that I could test them to see if that's what they know how to do it. And so when I'm actually vetting people, I'll give them kind of like this little exam or test to see if they know what they're doing. Then after I hire them, there's an onboarding process. Through the onboarding process, they're going to have some tasks to do. And I'm going to check every day to see if those tasks that they're doing are being done correctly. And if they're not, then I move on. If they are, then I know that this person is someone I can build on because they have a certain foundation of things that I'm looking for, and I can start depending on them.
The AI that you use, do you have one in particular, or do you use a multitude of different AIs to kind of help you create all this?
Yeah, I'm only using ChatGPT at the time, but it's the paid version, obviously.
Yeah. So we had a podcast almost completely on how to use AI as delegation, right? So because you could delegate so much to AI in business and processes. So as you've been kind of using AI and kind of building that, how have you found the effectiveness of that versus previous experience before AI? How have you what sort of difference has that made for you?
Oh my God. It's probably saved me hours of research, right? Before it was Google. I used to Google everything. Like, I don't know how to do this. And then you go on a forum or a Reddit or something, you have to read it. And then you're like, okay, what do I have to do here? And mind you, these are completely different businesses. Like, pharmacy business is a brick and mortar business. Apex Functional Health is an online business. And so they're completely run different. And so even though I have a ton of experience in the pharmacy space and brick and mortar businesses, which I've also built, a 𝗍𝗽cie jiu-jitsu studio, which is also a brick and mortar, very easy. That model is super easy to replicate for me because I understand it. But now I'm stepping into this online world, and it's a very different world. And so I'm learning all of it all over again. And I'll be honest with you, before I started using AI, it was all reading books, reading forums, reading, blogs, and trying to understand it, and then trying to do it myself, and then making the error. And then I realized that there are people who've done this already, right? Why am I trying to reinvent the wheel? So I started going to health conferences and talking to people with experience who've done this. And when I started learning from them, I realized that, hey, here's my vision for my company. Would you be interested in stepping into this company, for a percentage, or for ownership, or for a profit share, or for, vesting period, or for a salary, depending on what they wanted, just so that I could get the right people aligned in the vision and in the growth. And I didn't realize how many people had experience, but they were looking for a person like me. They were looking for the person who knows how to connect with other people, who has the relationships, who knows how to speak, because that's not their superpower. Their superpower is in building and in funnels and creating this back world that I don't know anything about. And so it's amazing when you actually also put yourself out there into the right environment and ask the questions, and knowing exactly what you do, and telling people, hey, this is my superpower. I'm looking for this person. And they'd be like, oh, I'm looking for you.
And I think that's a key to almost any business, right? If you hire a bunch of people that are just like you, boy, that's a recipe for disaster, right? So you need people that are.
A lot of us tend to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of us tend to hire the same people that we are because we connect with that person. And it's become so easy. Like, oh, this person kind of reminds me of me. But that's not what you want. You don't want the person like you. You want the person who's not like you, so you can delegate a lot of this stuff to them.
Have you always known that you needed to hire folks who weren't like you, or is that something that was a lot of trial by error for you, or you just hired the wrong people over and over again?
I've hired over 1,000 people in my life. And I will tell you, like, the first couple of years, it was a shit show. Like, just not knowing, and then you don't know when to let them go either, because you just don't understand the process so well. And so like in pharmacy, when I first started, it was just me. I was a solopreneur. I built this pharmacy with my bare hands, and I was working it, and I was working behind the bench, and I hired my first technician, and I didn't know anything about systems. I'm like, hey, just do this, do that, do that. And then they leave, and next one, I'm telling the same person, the next person, the same thing. And then I realized I'm telling the same thing to 20 different people over. I was like, I got to write this down, and then I started writing it down. And then obviously we scaled, I scaled 𝗍𝗺𝗀𝘀𝘁𝘀, which is the pharmacy company, to multiple locations. And in order to do that, you have to have every system in place, right? So, and then you have to get everybody kind of bought in. And so now moving into Apex, it's much easier because I understand just from step one, everything I'm doing, I need to do it one time. I just got to record myself doing it. I got to write every single thing down. And then every time I fix the process, I have to change it, re-record, and do it over and over and over. So then when someone else is coming in, they just have to watch a recording, or they have to just read notes. And then they're like, oh, okay, I can implement this, like an instructor manual.
What sort of systems do you have in place where you house all of that type of stuff, where people are kind of reviewing it? Like if somebody's onboarding and they have to learn all these systems, what sort of software or different things do you use inside of your company to kind of make sure that all of this runs smoothly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So even that has its own system, right? Like where to start them and where they need to be by week 1 and where they need to be by week 2. So in the 𝗍𝗺𝗀𝘀𝘀, in my pharmacy company, it was all through shared drive, through the Microsoft. Through Apex, it's all through Google Drive. And then everything has a cloud base, so we don't lose any of it. And we have a copy of it somewhere else as well. And so we make sure that, and then depending on what their position is, or if we even need to create a new position, we create the SOP before we actually onboard them so that they have a starting point. Now, we're going to adjust it, right? Because they may find, again, these are people who are kind of specialists in this area. This is why we hired them. So from that point forward, they may adjust the SOP to make it even better. And so now we had a starting point. They adjusted it. If they stay with us, great. If they leave, we have to bring someone else in, or maybe they need a backup, right? So then they train that person, and then that person might add to it. And so it just keeps getting better and better and better.
Yeah. And I think that the iterative process of putting all that down and continually doing it, again, like you said, is a process in and of itself, making sure that all of that is done. And when it comes to delegating that, how do I know that I hate having to follow up 17,000 times, do all the different things, make sure that this is done, make sure that is done. I always feel like I'm a micromanager, or I would be a micromanager if I did some of that. So what kind of process have you built to make sure that, hey, I'm doing this thing and I know I needed to change something. How does your team know that, okay, I see something needs to be changed. I know I need to go change this thing. And how do you know that is getting done?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that was one of the biggest hurdles to this online business, right? Because before, when I was in person, I could see them. And I was like, oh, okay, I know this needs to be done. And then I would write it down to make sure that it gets done. And eventually every day I check, hey, did it get done or no? But when you're online, you don't see these people. And so I hired a project manager. And this project manager is essentially the glue between everyone. And what they do is they're like follow-up kings or queens. They're the rock stars. So they check in with everyone. They delegate what needs to be done. And then what they do is they teach each person what needs to happen, like a follow-up system. And so then they follow up to see if everything was being completed. And they give them deadlines on all of it. So I'm not doing any of this, because this was one of the things that I was truly bogged down by. But when I hire an effective project manager, oh my God. Like if we say, hey, these are all the projects we're working on. This project is this person's working on, this project this person's working on, this project this person, and here's what needs to be done for it. They're going to connect with them. All right, show me where you're at. Their whole job is just to follow up with everyone. And we've been able to do that through hiring like internationally. And so it's not super expensive, but they have everything running to a T. It's incredible. Even watching their spreadsheets and like how they follow up and what they're following. And then at the end of the week, myself and the project manager and my COO will all jump on a call, like a team meeting, and we'll be like, hey, these are all the things that were done. And then we'll be like, here's what happened, and here's where it checked off, and everything's completed. And we just go through the process. We look at it to see if it's great. And they even test it out before it comes to us.
What has your experience been like hiring internationally and bringing employees on like that?
Yeah, so that was a bit of a hurdle for me because, trusting someone to actually be doing the work. And then, are they clocking in their time? Are they really available? A lot of people use like time trackers or ProTrack or something where they'll actually make sure that the client is actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. If their mouse hasn't moved or something like that. We didn't go that route. I mean, we did try it, but what we did is we kind of put people to the test, and we got lucky with a few people who were like, to the minute. They'll be like, hey, I worked 39 minutes today, and this is what I worked on. And so once you have one person, then that one person can hire all of your other people. And they know what they're looking for because they're looking for people like them who are that honest and that. So it took us a lot of time to get that one person. But then once we got it, now we have like 5 of those people. And everyone's like extremely detailed and in their recording. And then we also know that this task should take X amount of time, right? So our project manager knows that. They know that this task should take about 2 hours or 2 days. And if it's not done by 3 or 4 hours and it's supposed to take 2 hours, hey, what's the holdup? What have you show me the process of what you've been doing? So they're following up with everyone. Because if you follow up, now you're bogged down being the project manager. How do you grow your business if you're the project manager? You're micromanaging now.
You said that it took you a while to find that one person who can do all of that. What was that process like? How did you, if you were to do it over again, how would you make it a smoother process to where it didn't take that long to do?
Well, so the first thing is we have to understand what we're looking for, right? So we went through chat, gave it all as part problems. What are we looking for? X, Y, and Z, and it created kind of like that, the checklist to what we're looking to hire. And then once we started going through, we did go through like 3 or 4 people until we found that one person, which mind you is not a lot compared to like going through 1,000 people, right?
For sure.
We did go through a lot of resumes, maybe about 50 to 60. And then what we do is we don't give them full time. We give them 10 hours a week. Hey, 10 hours a week, we're going to see what you can do. And we overload them. And we got lucky with this one person who's incredible. And she was able to really take that 10 hours. And honestly, she did probably more than she did what someone would have done in 80 hours in 10 hours. And then we were able to, once we found that, because we had the checklist, we knew exactly what we were looking for. And ChatGPT was amazing in helping us create that. And then us really just seeing so we don't hire anyone full-time. It's always like 10 hours a week. And then they have to earn more time based on their performance.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. So how do they, if they're coming on and saying, "Hey, I'm working 10 hours a week, I'm going to earn the performance," but what if they're having to do another job because 10 hours a week isn't enough for it? How have you kind of balanced to make sure that they're the right candidate who's able to put in the effort to earn it without losing the right candidate to somebody who's offering them a 40-hour job?
Yeah. So I mean, and that has happened, and we're okay with it. So hey, 10 hours, and this could potentially turn into full time if you're the right fit. And we understand that you may have other jobs that you're taking, and that's okay. Don't let it conflict with these 10 hours, and we see what they can do, and if they're that 10 hours, they could kind of knock it out of the park, then great. Hey, we're going to up you to 20 now, now if they say, oh, I'm working with this other client and we love, okay, cool. How many hours can you give us? We've lost potential candidates to other clients, and that's okay. We just have them hire someone else in those 10 hours until we can find the right one. Most of them, what I'll end up having, will entice them, right? Because most people, when they're hiring VAs, they're not hiring them full time. They're hiring for tasks. So they'll be like, hey, I have this other job that I'm doing this task for this one person. Okay, how many hours are you doing for them? Oh, I'm doing about 15 hours a week. Okay, great. So they may be getting paid full time, but they're only doing 15 hours a week for that one person, potentially, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be like, all right, we'll get you up to 20. We're going to put you up to 40. We'll give you a slight raise. Right. And so now we know we have a rock star. We're going to start giving them more, but you potentially could lose that person.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's always a risk. And it's one of those that as you're going through it, like keeping your eye on the ball and saying, hey, what is this person actually bringing for me? And analyzing, I think, making it swift actions, but whether it's hire or fire, one or the other, I think is probably going to be key to that. Would you agree with that?
I do. And I think what ends up happening for most people, including myself, is we have a hard time firing someone because we've given them so much, right? We hired you full time. We're giving them all this work. And it's like, oh my God, if I fire them, then who's going to come in and substitute this person? And, I got to retrain them. That's why the 10 hours a week is amazing, right? It's like, hey, 10 hours a week, you're hiring like 3 to 4 people, right? And so you can keep up with 10 hours a week for each person, kind of seeing what they were. If you hire 2 people at 10 hours a week and you kind of give them both different jobs and you see one is knocking it out of the park in 10 hours and the other one isn't, that person's probably not the right person. So it's like, all right, I'm going to stay with this person. Hey, I'd love to offer you more. And then you just keep bringing in more people. And then they earn their time up. Eventually, you're going to have full-time employees, but you're going to have rock star employees. And you don't have to it's easy to let go of someone that's been doing 10 hours. You're like, hey, it's not working out, and then you just move on. How long of a time frame from initially bringing them on, giving them a couple of these tests, seeing how it is before you start actually increasing that time? Is it a week? Is it a month? How long is that time usually? That's a great question. So once we onboard them, it takes about a week to train them, right, on what we want them to do. And then we give them the tasks, and it'll take, we like to train 2 to 3 people at the same time. So we know that 1 or 2, if they're not going to work out, it's not going to be that bad. So I'll have like my project manager or an admin be like, all right, admin, I want you to train these 3 new admins. It's going to be 1 every day or simultaneously. And then they're going to be doing different tasks. So they all understand that they're competing with one another as well. And then what ends up happening is if within 2 to 4 weeks, we can make a very accurate decision if they're the right fit or not. Okay. Based on the questions they're asking, based on what they're doing, based on the performance. Some of them will say, hey, I worked 13 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours, but I only want 10. Yeah. That's a different character person. Yeah. We had one admin that stepped in, they were doing 20 and she was putting in 45 hours a week and only getting paid for 20. So we were like, what the hell? Like, there's no way you got all this done in 20 hours. She was like, no, I was working 9 hours a day all week. And we're like, why? And she was like, I really wanted to get it done. And I knew 20 hours wasn't going to happen. So I didn't want to stop until it was done. Well, that's the type of person I want on my team. Yeah. I was like, all right, well, what would it take to get you down to full time? And she was just like, I'd love to work full time. Easy. Yeah. Well, I mean, she already was, right? So she was, exactly. I want to pay you for what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. But that's phenomenal, Adrian. First off, thank you so very much for jumping on. You obviously have a wealth of knowledge. You've created a bunch of different things. You're doing really well with this stuff. So if folks are here at Apex, they're like, man, I like functional health is something I really need to jump on. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you to learn a little bit more about what you're doing there? Go to my website, apexfunctionalhealth.com. Schedule a discovery call. You can read what we do. Every single person should schedule a discovery call. It's so important that you understand even that in that 30 minutes, we're going to talk about health. We're going to talk about some of the things that are going on. People don't know this world. This is kind of like an underground world. They should schedule a discovery call. They should look at the website. They should read what we offer. I think it'll change people's lives forever. And I think anybody wearing those types of glasses are going to be somebody they need to be able to talk to for functional health stuff, because you're clearly on the mark on those. I love it. Well, I mean, think about it, right? You're in front of a computer screen all day. What is that going to do to your eyes? Yeah, it's funny. We don't have video games at my house at all, but I took one of my old video game systems and brought it over to my parents' house. We were visiting my parents this weekend, and my 6-year-old, we were playing some of the video games. So we were playing GoldenEye, like back in the day, video game. Right? I had my old N64 playing GoldenEye, and we got to the level. My son was like, my eyes. I'm not even crying. Why are they watering? I'm like, yeah, this is what I do to myself every single day. But I need to get a pair of glasses just like that, because it is.
a major strain on the eyes. But Adrian, I thank you so very much for jumping on. I really, really appreciate it. It's been awesome kind of hearing a little bit more about what you got going on, how you've kind of developed the business in the background, how you're doing all of that. Everybody who's listening, please reach out to Adrian. It was apexfunctionalhealth.com, right?
Yep, correct.
apexfunctionalhealth.com. Check it out. Reach out to Adrian. Adrian, again, thank you so very much. Please, everybody, like, subscribe, comment below what your favorite part of the podcast was. Tell us some feedback. We'd love to hear it. And if you disagree with some, also say something. If you're not watching the video, Adrian has some big biceps, so he can arm wrestle really well. So be ready for a good arm wrestling match in the comments if it comes at it. So thank you all very much for coming in. Thank you again, Adrian, and we'll see everybody on the next show.